Okay, let's talk about that feeling, when American politics just seems like this tangled mess.
Yeah, absolutely. You're just bombarded, right? Fiery debates, nonstop ads, Democrats versus Republicans.
Exactly. It can really leave you wondering, is there any actual, rhyme or reason to it all? Well, think of this as maybe your moment of clarity. Today, we've got what feels like a pretty solid roadmap to help navigate this whole thing.
Definitely. We're doing a deep dive using the book American Political Parties and Elections. And look, if you're imagining some dry, dusty textbook...
You should try to get that.
Right. Think again. This is much more like having a really insightful guide, someone unpacking the history, the mechanics, and, why things look the way they do.
And the authors here, they've really put in the work. So our goal today really is to pull out the most crucial insights from what they've found, give you a clearer picture of the forces actually shaping American democracy.
We want to help you sort of understand the story behind the headline.
Yeah, exactly.
Think of it maybe as getting like an exclusive backstage pass, to the often quite dramatic stage of American politics.
Okay.
We'll be looking at how our parties developed, that whole fascinating process of how candidates even get on the ballot.
Which is complicated in itself.
Oh, absolutely. And what drives voters, how to make sense of all the election info flying around, and some of the big challenges we're facing now.
Okay, so let's jump in. The book kicks off looking at the journey, the path that led us to the two-party system we basically have now.
Right.
It talks about the really early days, even before formal parties, when you just had these different groups with different ideas starting to sort of clump together.
And what's really interesting, I think, is that the founders themselves were actually pretty wary of political parties. They kind of hoped for a more unified country. But as the book lays out, just the natural differences in opinion, about the best way to govern, well, that led to these first factions popping up.
And from there, the party system, as we kind of recognize it, started taking shape. Yep. And it's worth remembering, it hasn't always just been Democrats and Republicans, has it? Not at all. The book points out the recurring influence of third parties throughout U.S. history. They might not, win the big one very often.
True.
But they can definitely shake things up, push new ideas into the conversation, bring issues to the forefront.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The book also goes into these major realignments. These are like significant lasting shifts in who supports which party, the core issues. Yeah. It really changes the whole political landscape, kind of like a historical drama where the main characters and their alliances suddenly shift.
And if you connect that to the big picture, these realignments, they often happen because of huge historical events or major social changes, right?
Like the Civil War.
Exactly. The Civil War triggered a massive reshaping of party loyalties, ideologies. And then you have the New Deal era in the 30s, another critical turning point.
So understanding those past shifts really helps explain why our current parties look the way they do today. It gives you that context,
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. How does someone go from just being, a person with ideas to actually being a candidate on the ballot? You picture someone giving that passionate speech.
Right, rallying the crowd.
But there's a long path before that, and the book really breaks down that journey, focusing on the nomination process.
And this is where we get that backstage look, The book explains the primaries, the caucuses, they happen state by state.
And the rules are different everywhere.
Oh, totally. That's crucial to understand. The rules can vary quite a bit state to state, which adds this significant layer of complexity to the whole thing.
It really does. You've got open primaries, closed primaries, caucuses. It feels like a real patchwork quilt sometimes. The book stresses how candidates have to tailor their strategies to win in those early contests. They're trying to win over the party faithful first, build that momentum.
You have to. Those early wins matter psychologically, financially.
So what does this mean for us watching? It means the nomination isn't just some rubber stamp. It actively shapes who the final candidates even are.
Precisely. And the book also highlights the vital role of the party organizations themselves, often working behind the scenes.
Right, the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, they provide crucial resources, strategic advice, access to networks of support, all things that are pretty indispensable for a candidate trying to navigate this really intricate process.
Okay, so we've got the parties, we've got how candidates emerge, but the book also, naturally, puts a big focus on the voters, which makes total sense.
Of course, the key players, ultimately.
It explores why people choose to vote And just as importantly, maybe why they choose not to vote.
And that raises a really fundamental question, doesn't it? What are the motivations that actually get people to participate? The book looks at a whole range of factors.
Like what?
Well, things like a sense of civic duty, maybe believing their vote matters, but also more personal reasons. And conversely, it also looks at the obstacles, the barriers that might stop people from voting.
And then there's the how people decide who to vote for. The book digs into things like socioeconomic background, personal beliefs, religion.
Where they get their news.
Yeah, and where they get their information. It's almost like being a social scientist trying to figure out the why behind millions of individual choices.
And what's really insightful here is how campaigns strategically try to tap into all those different factors, right? To mobilize specific groups. They use all sorts of tactics, targeted ads, grassroots organizing, all aimed at getting their specific supporters out to the polls.
Okay, now, election season hits. It can feel like you're just drowning in information. Polls, news, social media, just constantly buzzing.
And information overload is real.
Totally. It's easy to feel overwhelmed. But the book offers a pretty helpful way to sort of make sense of that noise.
Yeah.
It looks hard at the role money plays in campaigns, which, let's be honest, is huge.
It is, and the book gives good context for understanding the often really complex rules around campaign finance and the debates about them. It looks at how money is raised, how it's spent, and what the potential impact of all that spending might be on who actually wins.
And then there's the media. You've got traditional news, but also this massive world of social media now. The book explores how both types shape public opinion, how they influence the whole conversation around an election. It feels a bit like getting a decoder ring sometimes, to help understand the messages flying at you.
That's a good analogy. And the book also touches on the increasingly sophisticated communication strategies that parties and candidates use now.
Meaning?
Well, they're leveraging data analytics, micro-targeting, sending very specific messages to very specific groups of voters. It's highly tailored.
Okay, so the book doesn't just stick to the mechanics, right?
Yeah.
It dives into some of the really complex, challenging stuff happening right now.
Definitely.
One of the big ones it tackles is partisan polarization. That feeling that the two sides are just getting further and further apart.
Yeah, and that's a critical issue. It has real consequences. The book analyzes the different things feeding into this divide, and importantly, its impact on just our ability to govern effectively, to actually solve national problems.
And it also gets into those ongoing, often quite heated debates about voter access, things like voter ID laws, early voting.
Right, and the whole question of election integrity. These are front and center issues today.
Yeah, you hear about them constantly.
And the book does a good job, I think, of presenting different viewpoints on these complex issues. It encourages a more nuanced understanding of the arguments. It also looks at the role of special interest groups, how they try to exert influence.
And it makes the point clearly. The American political system, the parties, they aren't set in stone. They're constantly evolving.
Always changing.
It talks about how shifting demographics, changing social values, other big trends are continually reshaping things. It's like having a thoughtful discussion about the ongoing story of American democracy itself.
And to really make all this concrete, the book is packed with real-world examples, case studies.
Which helps a lot.
It does. It's not just abstract theory. You see how these concepts actually play out in real elections, specific political moments.
Right. It's like finally connecting those news headlines you see every day to the deeper currents, the underlying forces that are actually driving things.
Makes it feel less random.
Yeah, much more understandable.
These specific examples really help illustrate the complexities, the nuances of American politics in a way that's much more likely to, stick with you.
So, wrapping up, if you've ever felt like American politics is just this overwhelming, maybe negative jumble.
Which is easy to feel.
Right. Taking this kind of deep dive using American political parties and elections as a guide, it can offer some really valuable clarity. It gives you a solid but still accessible overview of the essential pieces.
And by getting that solid understanding, the history, the processes, the motivations, you're genuinely empowered, I think, to be a more informed, more engaged participant.
Yeah, you can move beyond just reacting to the latest tweet or headline.
Exactly.
It's not just about understanding the past or even just the present, but also about being maybe better equipped to think critically about the future of American politics and your own role in it.
Which brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you to chew on. Considering that whole historical evolution of parties we talked about, how might that understanding help us make sense of the political alliances and, frankly, the divisions we see right now? And maybe what are the potential long-term consequences of some of those trends in voter behavior we explored? Something to think about.